come on, everybody. Let's hear a bigger clapping. It's the hump of the afternoon. Let's go. All right, let's bring out our panelists. Let's get Michael, Jonathan, and
hey, we are on there. Fantastic.
Eric, come on out. They're in the back. They're making some deals with crypto right now, so it's going to be a moment. All right, well, while we're waiting, what we're going to do is we're going to get into a really exciting and quick conversation about how do you play in this game, and how are large companies doing it, how are venture capitalists doing it, how are great retailers doing it, and we're going to look at a lot of different perspectives, and this is all about surviving getting into this space. When you're ready, my darling, come on up on the stage. That's how we fly in the crypto space, right? All right, so I'm going to do a speed round of having my panel just quickly introduce themselves, then we'll come back and we'll have them talk about their perspectives, and then we'll get into some exciting conversations. So let's just go down the row and just introduce who you are real quick.
Hi, I'm Eric Wade. I'm the editor of Crypto Capital, and I am with Stansberry. It wasn't me, I promise. I'm with Stansberry Research, and I have a pretty broad background, probably one of the more weird people that's been on this stage. I've written a screenplay and sold it to Adam Sandler. I used to buy and sell domain names and sold to wallstreet.com for $1 million, and then discovered Bitcoin and went down the rabbit hole.
You are very weird. Okay.
Very weird.
And Jonathan?
Jonathan Johnson. I'm the CEO of Overstock.com. Overstock was the first major retailer to accept Bitcoin as a payment method back in January of 2014. We then set up a company called Medici Ventures, which invests in companies advancing blockchain technology. And so in addition to being the CEO of Overstock, I'm the president of Medici Ventures.
Great. And Michael?
I'm Michael Terpin. You'll be hearing from me later around 4-ish. I guess I'm doing a keynote. I went down the rabbit hole in 2013. I'm a serial entrepreneur in marketing and technology and investing, and saw the wave of multimedia begat the internet, begat social media, and then I saw digital assets and was like, this changes everything, and I still feel that way.
Fantastic. And Jalak?
Hi, I'm Jalak Jobanputra, founder of Future Perfect Ventures. We're an early stage fund in New York. I launched the fund in 2014, a focus on decentralization. I've been a VC since '99, got to invest in the early days of the internet, and what I saw in the early days in the 2012 to 2013 timeframe at the Bitcoin conferences I was going to was the energy and the talent that I saw in the early days of the internet. And so I decided to launch a venture fund that was backing companies building the infrastructure around decentralization, and crypto is certainly part of that. We have 50 portfolio companies right now, over 2 funds, and about to launch our 3rd fund, and we invest globally.
Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to start with you, Michael. Now, I know you have a lot to say, and you're going to be giving, you're going to have a whole keynote later. So give just this, and for this topic, for the Survivor's Guide, give me a little blip about why Bitcoin, because of all the people in the universe, you are the most bullish about Bitcoin of anyone I've ever met. So give us a little taste of why, but a short taste, so I can hear from everyone else, and then we'll come back and argue. Maybe even get into fisticuffs.
You clearly haven't talked to Tone Vace or some of the Bitcoin maximalists. But no, I'm bullish on the overall blockchain sector. I'm very bullish on public blockchain. Just like in the early days when corporates would say, well, we don't really want to be on the internet, it's too scary and dangerous, we're going to go and build our own intranets. And then they realized they could just put stacks on top of that. I think that's what the future is for the public blockchain. But we're 11 years in now as of this week, and we've gone from something that was laughed at and ignored, and now it's $200 billion market cap, 210 actually, went up about 10 billion in the last 48 hours. And it is a number of things, but at its essence, Bitcoin and everything else that came after it, what makes it important is just as the Web 1.0 allowed you to have digital files where you could copy and reproduce it a billion times, you don't want to do that with money. You don't want to do that with other scarce assets. This is a digital asset. It's a hard asset with digital qualities. digital gold and all of its variants, and that is a game changer.
And of the different types of crypto, you know, do you have a favorite? Do you have one that you're more excited about?
Again, I'll address some of that in my keynote. I think that there's opportunities in a number of areas, 5 or 6 in particular. I think Bitcoin is still the leader in terms of being able to be a store of value for the third world and for places that have governments that will degrade and debase and confiscate assets from their personnel. We don't have that issue in the United States. At least we don't have it right now. And but it's something that really gives people power, just like they had when they would just keep gold in a lockbox in their backyard.
Great point. Now, Jonathan, let's pop over to you. I'm a huge fan of Overstock. I'm
Thank you.
a working mom, and he didn't tell me to say that. I actually do shop there, and I really like it. And you guys were literally one of the first sort of online retailers to accept Bitcoin. So I know you guys are big investors. Sort of tell us on the blockchain side. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Michael talked about the blockchain is great because it lets us transfer assets digitally. Today, or pre-blockchain, in order to transfer assets, we always needed middlemen. We needed banks, we needed governments, we needed brokers. We can now do that with blockchain technology with a digital handshake rather than a handshake through a trusted agent that's going to take a fee for that. So where we're investing are companies that we see natural assets, digital assets transferring, whether that's on Wall Street with a company like T0, which is letting security tokens, and we think eventually stocks and bonds all trade digitally using blockchain technology, whether it's in voting, where your digital asset is your vote, that when you cast it, it's cast once in that election and not multiple times, with a company we've invested in called Votes, V-O-A-T-Z, or it can be in helping central banks issue digital currency, which is what BIT, one of our portfolio companies, is doing. And then the last one, I think it's really going to be evolutionary in the developing world, is what Medici land governance is doing, where land title is digitized and where people can't prove title now can prove that they own their property, whether they're going to borrow against it, sell it, subdivide it. It really makes dead capital, land that's not owned or proved to be owned, and then they can access and leverage that.
It is unusual, I think, for a retailer, an online retailer, to be in this space so deeply. Is there a reason you guys jumped in?
Sure. Overstock we've always viewed ourselves as technologists. We started in online commerce and e-commerce in 1999, when that was kind of the early wave. One of the reasons we began accepting Bitcoin was so that our technologists would become more familiar with blockchain technology. The internet made it so that we exchanged information freely and frictionlessly. Blockchain is going to let us exchange assets freely and frictionlessly. So as a technology company, it makes a lot of sense to morph from one to the other. If you think of us purely as someone who sells sofas and sheets, it's a little different, but we're more than just that.
That's great. All right, I want to jump over to Jay. So tell us, as a venture capitalist in the space, and I know you've been in this since 2014, and had a thesis about it. So share with us what your thinking was in all this.
Yeah, so I was just looking, from a macro perspective, what was happening in the world, and that's how I've always invested. And we were seeing a proliferation of data, and data that was getting hacked consistently by the current infrastructure that was in place through the servers. Seeing more and more sensors and devices out there that are collecting data that are going to have to exchange that data somehow, but it doesn't really make sense for that data to move kind of off the device into a cloud and back. And so I was just thinking broadly, we need other infrastructure, not the infrastructure that's in place now. So when I started digging into blockchain technology, I thought that a lot of these challenges could be addressed by different business models and different technologies emerging out of the Bitcoin blockchain technology. So that was my viewpoint. And so when I compare it to the internet, to me, just how the internet impacted finance, impacted media, impacted healthcare, every single industry, we are going to see that same impact through blockchain technology to the point where most of it will be invisible. We won't know that we're always using it. And that's where I think about it going beyond just crypto. Now, I'm very excited about the idea of crypto and crypto economics and being able to reduce the need for intermediaries. I was born in Nairobi. One of my first investments out of the fund is a company called BitPesa. That's been just growing astronomically over the last couple of years. And the founder decided to use Bitcoin blockchain technology for transfers. And not only remittance consumer, bringing the Western Union costs, sometimes in Africa can be up to 20% down to less than 3% instantaneously, because usually you have to go through many different banks, offshore, onshore, which adds costs and time into those transfers. But also have found that a lot of businesses are very interested in being able to pay their people more efficiently at lower costs.
And how many of you like to get paid at lower costs, right? How many of you are getting ripped off by the man when it's time for your payroll? All right, nobody?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so...
Yeah, right? Okay.
I think even in the US, right, there's so many intermediaries. Like if I want to wire money overseas, it's a $50 fee. There's no reason in this day and age, other than the fact that banks' business models are under a lot of pressure post-2008 around compliance, and they have to make it up through fees, and that's what they've been doing. But that's not going to last that much longer, and I do think blockchain tech is going to be an important part of the transition. That's
great. So saving a lot of the fees and eliminating all that hassle. Eric, let's jump over to you. So you're editor-in-chief of Crypto Capital. So give us a perspective of what you're doing, because you have a unique model as well.
Yes, I have the luxury and burden of being able to look at just about anything in the crypto space that could possibly be a viable investment or speculation or a new technology. But on the other hand, I have the burden that I have to recommend it to people who may or may not have ever invested in them before. And so I'm also challenged with making the story something that people can kind of get their arms around, and something that you've got a lot of experience with, that if I could find the world's greatest widget, and I knew next week it was going to be 1.x value for that widget, I'd still have to reduce it down to a concept, a story that I could then share with people that could say, oh yeah, that looks good. I can see why Eric's recommending that. So I have these different lenses that I have to hold all of the different cryptos up to that when I first got involved, the thing I liked the most was this kind of punk rock, anarchist, libertarian idea of money that the man didn't create and doesn't touch. And then you start digging into it and you realize that the aspect of storing value doesn't have to just be about dollars. And that's what really intrigues me the most, is you can almost see this hierarchy of people's thought, is when you start talking to them about value and they can't get their mind off of dollars, you know where the conversation is going to go, right? They're speculators. They want to buy low, sell high, and 97% of them lose money. But you start talking to an artist about value, or someone who's got photographs of important family members, and all of a sudden the conversation changes, right? Because what is the price of a photograph of your dead grandmother, so to speak, or somebody like that, or a record album that you maybe worked 12 months on? What's the value of that? Maybe a little bit harder to pin down into dollars. And so I look at crypto as trying to find ways to match itself up to all these problems that humans have. And some of them haven't been identified, some of them haven't been solved. But I think this idea of decentralized. I think this idea that anyone can participate in open source and everybody can bring their different talents to this, it's just exciting to me, because the solutions that are coming some of them I think are gonna blow us away. They're gonna surprise us.
So let me just ask the sort of hyped question around crypto in general, that people are afraid of it. They're afraid of it. It's not real. It's weird. It's unstable. Just as a panel, anyone want to jump in here? Someone's coming up to you and saying, should I buy some Bitcoin? What should I do? What are you going to tell them? Because there's all sorts of bad press about it, even now.
So there was bad press about the internet and social media. I remember people laughing at anybody on Twitter saying, why the hell do I care what you had for breakfast? This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I'm not going to go on Facebook. I don't want people to know where I am. And I also remember in the early days of the internet, and it wasn't even that early to me because I got it in 92, was in 95, there was still a big piece in Newsweek basically saying no one's going to ever read on a computer versus a fine, shiny magazine like this. They're gone and there's 4 billion users on the internet. And I remember also a studio executive at NBC saying, NBC will never be on the internet because my mom is not going to go and put a second phone line in. She's not going to get woken up in the middle of the night with something going bing, 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 It's about the GUI. Now you just hand your mom or your grandmother your iPhone and say, watch Netflix. So the GUI improves for all of these things. And the GUI will maybe not next year, but in 5 years, in 10 years, it'll be so transparent that you won't even be saying, well, of course it's on blockchain.
Jonathan?
So I completely agree. I think blockchain will evolve and is evolving to a place where we won't talk about blockchain. We don't talk about HTTP protocol. That's the internet. Well, I don't know how my cell phone works. I don't know how the apps on my cell phone work. I just know they work and they make my life easier and more simple. And when mobile voting comes and it's on blockchain-based technology, we won't care that it's on blockchain. We'll just know it's safe, secure, it's easy, and we don't have to stand in line at the junior high. And we won't know where a county called Broward is, and a hanging Chad won't be something we don't understand.
Yeah. Who wants to win money and prizes on Angry Birds? Well, right? If it's powered by blockchain and micropayments, do you care?
Right. Well, and I would say if you look at what's happened to date, there's been a lot of reasons to not trust the industry, right? There have been a ton of hacks, not due to what's happened on the actual blockchain itself, but the on and the off ramps, insiders.
Telcos, telecom companies.
No, I'm talking about the wallet hacks that happen within the sector.
And the telcos.
Yeah, and the telcos.
Well, and the telcos with the SIM. You're talking about the SIM. Yeah, with the SIM. Yeah. But so I would say that the industry, and this is one of the things we do. We invest in the infrastructure to make this scalable, to make it safer to use, to use better security mechanisms. And we've seen a lot of movement on that front over the last couple of years. I'd say especially since 2017, the hype that happened and then all the fallout from that, we've actually seen serious entrepreneurs come into this sector and really build. And so, I think some of that is going to go away. I think the user interface is key, but I also think people need to feel like the underlying infrastructure is secure, and there hasn't been a lot to make them feel that way today.
Right.
Laura, you've said people are worried it's not safe. The current system with middlemen's not safe. When we buy and sell stocks and bonds, they settle in 2 days after the trade, not instantaneously. That adds costs, it adds potential for mistake, and it adds potential for mischief. Another thing that's not safe is anytime you have trusted middlemen, they are then honeypots of information. That's why we know the name Equifax, because when it gets hacked, that's the honeypot where all our information is. When you have blockchain-based wallets that can only be accessed because of biometrics, you then don't have honeypots of information. You can maintain your privacy in a way that we can't today.
And the internet was not safe for e-commerce not that long ago. When Mark Andreessen got funded, right out of college for Netscape, he went all over the place, and he went to Macy's and said, you should go and put Macy's.com. They're like, why would we want to drive people out of our stores? And it's not like anybody would ever trust putting a credit card on the internet. And obviously, VeriSign and other SSL technologies, now it's safe.
And all of that's
yes,
being built.
It is.
Right.
It is still. There are still hacks, which the telephone industry is by far and away the #1 today. I'll just have to mention, because it is the 2-year anniversary to the day of me being hacked for $24 million by an employee at AT&T,
Right.
and that still is in court, and the rest have not been made yet. Even
So you're
though
going to buy
we know
us
where
a
they are.
lunch when it settles?
Absolutely.
Eric, I'm sure you must
So I
have.
have a little bit of a different take on all of this. I agree with you that I don't know how my phone works, but someone has to, right? At the very core of it, someone has to know how my phone works. And for the first time, what's different than any of the previous waves of technology, it is possible, if I wanted to, for me to go out and acquire that information and then audit my technology when it comes to something like a blockchain or Raven or something like that, right? It's now possible in ways it never was before. So I may not have to be the guy who understands how it all works, but I now have this option of designating someone I do trust, or that person, he or she, when they're developing this, they have to do it knowing there's a possibility they could be audited. And by audit, I mean, it could be the marketplace, or it could even be, a trusted government or something, right? Anything that we're building now, at least we've raised the bar to where if you're not building something that is open source, you're risking that someone may want to do it open source, or someone may want to do it for free over a weekend with their friends, right? You're risking this level of competition because I think the horse is out of the barn as far as people raising their expectations on dApps or on anything that we use, that we have to be able to trust who we turn it over to.
All right, we have 2 more minutes before we bring Alex out from Celsius. Just really speed round. If you were going to give advice to maybe invest in either a company or a particular crypto, what would it be? Let's start with you, Michael.
I do not give financial advice. Do your own research. I would say, though, from my personal perspective, if you're new to the sector, Bitcoin probably has your highest risk-reward opportunity, and it's the easiest to buy and to sell. There's no liquidity issues whatsoever.
I agree with what Michael said about Bitcoin. I think if you're looking to invest in the underlying technology, that's probably not in any particular crypto, but it's in venture funds like Gelax or places like Overstock, where we're investing in companies that are advancing blockchain technology.
Great.
Can we skip me and go to you?
Oh, sure. I think private companies are very hard to assess, and that's where I have a lot of folks who are LPs in our fund that maybe try to go direct into the different cryptos and realize that there's I follow this 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, right? This is the highest velocity information sector I've ever been
And you've been at this a
involved.
long time,
Yes,
too.
well, since 2013,
Yeah.
before I launched the fund in 2014. So. But I would say, going back to Bitcoin or any crypto, ETH you want to buy, it's the beauty of it is you only have to buy $5 worth or $10 worth, and then you can play around with it. And that's how I tell people to get started, where get comfortable with how is the news impacting the sector. Do you have time to follow the news, or do you just want to buy and hold? And that's great because it's such a low entry point, low friction point to get engaged in the sector, and that's really the best way to learn. It's still very, very early days.
Yeah, it is early. Eric, take us home, baby.
So I do give advice, and obviously the advice is do your own research. If you're nervous, dollar cost average into anything. If you don't have enough Bitcoin to last you for the rest of your life and your kids' lives and their kids' lives, then you don't have enough Bitcoin. They're not making any more. A little bit of time. I like Ethereum, ETH. You need to have at least a little bit of that because just so much is being built on it. And I really like Simple Token, OST. It's very tiny. If we all bought some right now, it would probably go through the roof because it's that small. But you have access to something you can invest in that people like herself usually have the access to. I think it's $2 million market cap or 5 or something. OST Simple Token builds other tools that allow corporations who want to create token value to do it easily. So I think there's going to be a lot of company money that's built on some of the blockchains that we've talked about, and I think OST is going to lead that, including they have an app for Droids and iPhones called Peepo that is going after TikTok and Snapchat. So if you wanted to find a way to turn your time into value and point your phone at yourself and say, hey guys, I'm at CES, and get paid for that, someone built that. And it's OST, and I recommend it.
That's great. Let's have a hand for our panelists. Some quick insights, drop in some wisdom. Great codes to hit us.